You've heard about the Great Reset and you've heard about Agenda 2030. Do you realize the roots of those go back 90 years? We're going to talk about that next.
Hi, I'm Pastor Dave, and welcome to another episode of The Final Hour. I am very excited about this show. We have so much material to cover today. Our guest this week is Patrick Wood, and Patrick is just an expert on several subjects. So let me just kind of cut to the chase and say, Patrick, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us.
Likewise, Dave. This has been an amazing journey. And, I've been at this for 48 years now.
Right.
You learn stuff along the way, right?
Oh my goodness. It's just spending time with you is just a blessing. The time that we've had together has been a blessing. Now, when I first discovered some of the material you're doing, I was reading this book. And what caught my eye with this was you went back to the Trilateral Commission.
Mm-hmm.
Just to kind of for people to understand what you do, you talk about technocracy and transhumanism. And those are two words that people may not be well aware of. And when I was reading your book, what really caught my attention was how you tied it into the Great Reset, the Agenda 21, which is now Agenda 2030.
Mm-hmm.
Those terms, I think people today understand. But the Great Reset is not new. And what caught my eye with this is you took it back to the Trilateral Commission, which I thought was going back 50 years. But the research you've done, what's happening in our world today really goes back to the 1930s and goes back over 90 years, correct?
That's right. Exactly right. It was a strange journey for sure.
Right.
But when the Trilateral Commission was formed in 1973 by Rockefeller and Brzezinski, that's Zbigniew Brzezinski, by the way, the father, late
Right.
father of Mika on TV. Everybody knows who Mika Brzezinski is. They set a plan in motion to create a new international economic order. That was all over their literature back then. And we didn't really know what to make of that at that time. We thought, well, they're just going to probably, like rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic or something. Titanic. We couldn't figure it out, but we wrote about them. Nevertheless, we produced two books at that time called Trilaterals over Washington, volumes 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that became the standard of analysis of the Trilateral Commission over the years. Even then, our books were used in political science classes and universities, et cetera, stuff.
Right.
But that's where this all started. And there was reasons for that, because what they were complaining about at that time, they couldn't get traction with all the other stuff they did over the years before 73. And they were whining about it. Well, we're not getting what we want out of this whole push to make a global government, et cetera. And so the Trilateral Commission really was a new thing, a new initiative on their part to do something new. And they've picked, unfortunately for us, they picked historic technocracy to do it. And that's where technocracy economic system that intended to micromanage and control everything that's could be controlled. And so we look back at historic technocracy,
Right.
to find out where they got it. How did it come into their view in 1973? Because now we look back, we see it clearly. We see the footprints all over this thing. So anyway, when you see this big picture, things we can't unsee it. Things just fall into place. You can't, you get amazed on how this all fits together. And how simple their plan was as well. It wasn't complicated.
Right. Right. That's what really attracted me to your teaching and going to your website. I mean, I'm a subscriber to your website. The articles you put up are amazing. But when I first understood
Yes.
your ministry and what you were saying, it was I did not
Yeah.
quite understand technocracy, what it really meant. And I assume many people, when they hear that, they're not aware of what it is, not aware it's an economic background. It's an economic system, which caught my eye. But the Great Reset, since the pandemic, we all know what that is. Agenda 20. Well, now it's 2030, but it came out Agenda 21 originally with the communities and so on. Those things
Yes.
we understood, but and hearing what the World Economic Forum says, the things they put out there publicly, and then seeing the material that you're putting together and saying, "Oh, wait a minute, this is not new.
Yeah.
They're coming off the playbook that is 90 years old." That was amazing to me. And when you look at what's happening in the pharmaceutical world, what's happening when they want to hack humans, as the World Economic Forum says, it's humans 2.0 now. All of this is the research. And then you brought this book out. And this book, it was just incredible with the material that you brought out as far as what this is. I do let people borrow this one. This one I hang on to because you signed this one for me. This is a personal copy, which I appreciate. But just when you look at technocracy and transhumanism, it just sounds science fiction. It sounds so far-fetched, but yet it's happening in our everyday lives. Can you kind of give us a synopsis on the purpose of the book and what you hope to accomplish when you wrote it?
You bet. And I tie in that book the connection to the Trilateral Commission as well,
Yep.
because when Zbigniew Brzezinski was at Columbia University, when he was picked up by Rockefeller to co-found the Trilateral Commission, he had written a paper, actually a book at that point, called Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. The Technotronic Era. That's what he said.
That's 1932.
It was, but he was a professor at Columbia University, by the way, when all this happened. So he understood what technocracy was. That was a word that could not be uttered in Columbia because it had a bad reputation at that point. There's reasons for that, but it doesn't matter. Technocracy was not a word that you used at Columbia University at that point. So he calls it Technotronic Era. And what he saw looking forward from 1973, he envisioned a stage where we would go through a metamorphosis, and we would eventually come to the new age, the next age, what he calls the Technocratic Era. This is where we are today. He was a master strategist for sure. The guy's brilliant in that sense. He could call a trend. In some cases, they make the trend come to pass, but nevertheless, he was a brilliant statistician. So what he was when he said between two ages, you have to remember, that means there's three ages, right? There's the one before, the one that exists, and then there's the one that can exist in the future. That's what he was writing about in that book. That's what captured Rockefeller's interest. What was this Technotronic era going to look like? Well, we're in it now, right? It's all over the landscape now. Whether sustainable development, Green New Deal, the war on carbon, the war on food, the war on energy, etc. He was a master of it, looking forward. Absolutely. So we see this today. We have to consider where it came from, what were the baby steps along the way that brought it to us, and the more stuff you piece into this, more of the picture that you get, everything falls into place like a giant jigsaw puzzle.
That's a good way of putting it together, because it exactly is what happened. It all comes together. You see the big picture. And this may be off base a little bit, but there's just so much I want to cover today. I want to go slowly so people understand it, because I remember how it was for me when I was trying to comprehend this for the first time myself. But this is going back to the 1930s,
Yes.
and you go back to A Brave New World, which you said was also
Yeah.
at the same time at Columbia University. And so we're going back 90 years. From your research, can you go back even further? Or is this the first time that man or a group of people really had the concept of what they want the future to be like, where there was control over everything from our
Yes.
food to our health to our bodies? Was the 1930s the first time this stuff started to bubble up, or do you have research going back further than that?
I do actually. There was talk about technocracy in the 20s, but you have to remember also that the whole thing started philosophically with a
Okay,
French philosopher. I can't get that word out. Philosopher. Forget it.
we got you. It's
Cut that
okay.
out. Um, by the name of Henri de Simon, and Saint Simon, and he made a proposition at that point that science should be like God, and that scientists and engineers, technicians, whatever, should serve this God, drive Christianity out of the system altogether. But he wanted to create a religion based on science, and it was a religion. He called for a priesthood to administer the religion to the world. Dangerous proposition. But this, from the early 1800s, this idea kind of caught on. It was slow at the first, but then when one of his disciples got a hold of it, his name was Auguste Comte. That was the father of social sciences, by the way. He made the same thing. We need to have a priesthood of scientists to go up the mountain, so to speak, to figure out what science says and then bring it down to us. Can anybody think, how about Anthony Fauci? Just put out, here it
The
is.
name we know. Yes.
Yeah, I'm the guy, the science guy, right? Don't take issue with me. I'm just the messenger. I'm just the priest, the high priest too. I'll tell you what science says. You have to just obey it.
Right.
You can
Now,
see
I had that term written down. It was scientism. Is that what you called it?
scientism.
Right. Scientism. It's a religion, they call it. It predicts the future. It requires, as you said, a priesthood to declare the truth to the ignorant masses, which is why you look at why the world powers are doing what they're doing. They don't think we understand enough, and they have to tell us what's right and what's wrong. But that goes back to the 1920s, you're saying?
No, it goes back to 1815
Oh, my goodness.
when Saint Simon wrote that. He was a philosopher, and that was his stick. He wanted to create a new Christianity, basically. He wanted to throw the Catholic Church in the drink and start this new religion called scientism.
So we're about 300 years past the Reformation period at that time, where really our modern day Christian doctrine
Yes.
comes from. So
Yes.
about 300 years later, you start getting this scientism.
Yes. Well, there were great people in the last century that wrote about scientism a lot. C.S. Lewis, for instance, was big on it. He was a huge critic. The Abolition of Man, for instance, was one of those books that really nailed it to the cross, so to speak. And other people like F.A. Hayek also wrote forcefully against scientism. So people knew about it back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. It was analyzed a lot, but nobody could really get rid of it because it was just on a tear at that point. Everybody apparently was really buying into it, especially with technocracy floating around. Technocracy,
Right.
in any case, technocracy and transhumanism are both based on scientism. That's where they got together, right? They didn't know it at the time, but we know it now because we see the markers all over it. The scientism is in view here.
Well, let's take that and go a little bit deeper at that, because my concern is that people don't understand the terms
Yes.
technocracy.
Yes.
They may not understand the term scientism. They may not even understand the term transhumanism. So, what terms would we know today that they would say, oh, that's what they were talking about way back then? Would it be better just to say the Great Reset or Agenda 2030, or is there more terms that people would be that the common person would recommend or recognize?
Yeah, exactly. Let's just define it here. Technocracy, first off, technocracy is an economic system that was created in the 1930s. Nobody in the history of the world had ever created a new economic system. That makes it special, if you will. It's never been done before in the history of the world. There's never been any such thing. So when they big egos that they had at these professors and engineers and so on at Columbia University, when they came out to play, they said, well, you know, the economy's in the tank, Great Depression, all that kind of stuff. We can do better. We can do better. We can really make a great bang up, you know, economic system that will really work based on science and engineering. That was trouble from the get-go, but they really thought they could do it. So they crafted this elaborately conceived idea for a resource-based economic system. Think sustainable development today, with the United Nations is trying to put at us, right? It's a resource-based.
That's the term I wrote down. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This is the heart of it. And secondly, they wanted to use energy to control the system, because that's how you control inputs and outputs. If you don't want people to consume more, then cut back on energy all around. Stuff doesn't get made. You know, people don't have the energy in their homes, etc., to enjoy stuff. You control the economy with energy. If you wanted to accelerate the economy, add more energy. Well, they thought at that point that they could control and balance the load on the resource extraction of the world if they can somehow, if they can control the energy, they can control the economy, and everything would be great. Their idea was, man, you guys are going to love this. But right. when you talk about the maniacs that do not believe in politics, for one thing, they just want to give you the science as a priest. That's the worst type of government that you could have, because it's based on that religious proposition. It's going to be really ugly at some point. In fact, it's getting ugly now, isn't it?
Right.
So now let's go over to transhumanism just for a second. Transhumanism proposes, in the end, to allow man to become immortal. Immortal. That's a God issue, right? Mortality. They think they can do it. This is their holy grail at this point, is to live forever somehow. They think that disease is death is a disease. It can be cured. Therefore, they're going to cure it, and they think they're going to fly into outer space or whatever. It doesn't matter where they're going to go. Some of them are just freezing their bodies and their heads right now, so they wait to the science to catch up. But this is a crazy proposition for sure. That's the part of it that's based on scientism for sure, because it's not going to happen. You know that the Bible tells us very clearly in Hebrews that no, it's appointed for a man to die once, and then comes judgment. So we don't have to worry about that. But they think they can do this at this point. Everything between here and the post-human scenario is all this is where transhumanism comes into play. The genetic modification, the implantables, wearable technology, stuff like that the World Economic Forum talks about all the time. When Klaus Schwab, for instance, talks about transhumanism and the fourth industrial revolution in particular, he says that technology is not just going to augment you. It's going to change you fundamentally down at the genetic level. And when people see what's going on here, it's like, oh, this is beyond weird. This is totally satanic, among other things. But this is what they're trying to do. So let me fast forward now to Klaus Schwab with this Great Reset. There's two parts to the Great Reset. The first one is the economic reset, where they want to create this new resource-based system, aka technocracy or sustainable development. They want to create this new economic system where energy will be the main thing to regulate. But when this utopia shows up, they have to put humans into it that can handle it. This is their thinking. Why would you put the old humans in a new system like this? They'll just wreck it anyway, right? They look at us as the world wreckers anyway. You know, they're the ones really wrecking everything, but they see us as the problem, not just Christians, but anybody who's out here, you know, in the streets. So in their mind, it's a two-stage process. They're preparing the world for this economic reset, but
Right.
they're preparing a people for themselves, this transhuman genre, to populate this new world.
It's like new wine in old wineskins, kind of.
Exactly so. Exactly.
Right.
This is a
Yeah,
big
this
dream.
is what
This is
really
a big
excited me
dream.
about what you. Right. This is what excited me about what you're doing, because when I started to read your material and start to understand your ministry, I thought, well, this is a little bit over my head. I'm not sure people understand it. But then when you started explaining what it was, I said, wait a minute, this is exactly what the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, things that we do know about, that's exactly what they're doing. So then you brought the history together and you brought the picture together,
Yes.
which again was the piece of puzzle for me, because you, in your book, and I don't remember which book it was, maybe both of them, but it said the real definition of technocracy is the science of social engineering. And you said the purpose is to distribute goods and services to the entire population, and this means doing away with the financial system. And when I read that, I went, oh, time out. That's exactly what the World Economic Forum wants to do. In 10 years, you own nothing and you'll be happy. And then you move down and said the new economic system, we'll call it now the United Nations 17 Sustainable Developments, which we understand. So again, pieces came together. And then transhumanism, when you start talking about that, again, it was kind of over my head. What are we talking about with that? It came down to wearable and implantable technologies. And you got the World Economic Forum coming out saying, well, we can now hack humans. So you have them saying we're going to hack humans. You go, what is that all about? But then you have you bringing the piece in saying, well, they're going to do that with wearable, technology and implantable technology. It's just amazing when it all comes together and you understand the big picture.
It is. And, the chief medical officer of Moderna, that's the big shot maker, right? Moderna.
Right.
The M
Correct.
stands for the part of mRNA, the last mRNA at the last of their name. That's how they got the name. All they do is messenger RNA type injections, right? And they've caused a lot of harm, lots of harm to people around the world. But he had this on his website. He's not there anymore. He left for higher ground, I guess. But this is what he had on. Believe it or not, this was his statement on his own webpage on Moderna's website. He said, "We're actually hacking the software of life. We think about it as an operating system. So if you could actually change that, if you could introduce a line of code or change a line of code, it turns out it has profound implications for everything." You think? this they're just right in your face with this. Oh, we're just going to, you got your operating system out there. Just think Windows 3.0. and we're just going to give you a fix here. You know, that you need an upgrade. You need a new line of code in your system to maybe give you some spike proteins for breakfast, you know?
Right.
And, but they didn't think anything about this. It occurs to them that this is such a natural process for them to do this to it. They didn't ask us. They didn't get anybody's opinion outside their own little circle. And then they come out today. Now they have come down the mountain, so to speak, to proclaim this is the way it's going to be.
Right.
We're going to change you. We're going to change you into something different from what you were a year ago. And they started the process.
Why do you think they're so bold about this? I mean, they do put it out there in your face. They do say this is going to happen. Do they think that it can't be stopped? What's your opinion, knowing the history? Why are they so bold?
They don't see any criticism whatsoever. They apparently are immune to criticism.
Okay.
It just rolls off their back. Really.
So what's the average person like you and I do?
Well, the only way I think is probably for people just to not play the game that they're trying to, get us into. If they want you to take a shot, don't take it. If they want you to wear a mask, don't do it. That sort of thing. That's something we can do personally that might send a message up the food chain. But in my experience, I've interacted with these people over the years. They're not interested in any criticism whatsoever from you and me or any expert in the field. They're not interested at all. And they just, they're so convinced that they're doing right things. It's like, well, don't bother me with the facts. We're doing a good thing here. We're going to help humanity. We're going to save the world. We're going to save humanity for what? From what? We don't know. But this is a philosophy that's deeply rooted in scientism, in my opinion, and it's evil to the core. It's evil.
That's my next point.
Yes.
That's my next point. So they don't see it as being evil to do depopulation, to cut the population down to whatever number they're at now, to control finances, to control our food, to control our health, to control all that. They don't see that as being evil. They see that as being a good thing.
Yes. Apparently so. Yeah.
That's unbelievable to us. Yeah. Dr. Richard Seed, I don't know if I've heard you talk about him, or I've read about him. But he talked about, he had a PhD from Harvard, and he wanted to clone humans. He wants us all to be God, small g, basically. And when you hear him talk, I'm not sure how long ago he was, back 20 years or how long ago he was.
About that, yeah. I think he's been dead for a while now, but yeah.
Yeah, but you go back to what the World Economic Forum is saying, what the United Nations saying, what the global elite are saying, and if you just heard it or read what the quote was, they would cover each other, they would match each other, and this has been a thinking for quite a while, and now it's making sense where it's coming from because you know why they're saying what they're saying.
Exactly. So listen to what Dr. Seed says about his journey and what he's going to do to become a god. He says, basically, if you prevent me from being a god, I'll kill you. Listen to the words.
We are going to become gods. Period. If you don't like it, get off. You don't have to contribute. You don't have to participate. But if you're going to interfere with me becoming God, you're going to have big trouble. Then we'll have warfare. The only way you can prevent me in this 50 year is to kill me. If you kill me, I'll kill you.
And watching that clip, that was Dr. Richard Seed, but that could be, again, the United Nations, World Economic Forum, the global elite. They're saying and doing the same things. I mean, history is repeating itself. It's amazing. Yeah. So thank you for that clip.
You bet. There you can see the determination in this guy's voice and his mind, his face. he is, so to speak, hell bent for leather to get
Right.
to become a god. Right. You can't argue with that, somebody in that position. There's no turning them back. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it. But, well, you know what though? He's dead now, so he knows the truth.
Right. Now, let me make sure I understand this, because I want some clarity on this. Mm-hmm. If I'm looking at scientism, if I'm looking at transhumanism, if I'm looking at technocracy, really what they're trying to do is they're trying to establish a new system. But going back to the 1930s and the time of Columbia University, they really don't want any, as you said, politicians, leaders. So am I right when I'm thinking they want to create a new system, but they don't want any global leadership? Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And this has been expressed by some global scholars, that they're building this system without a leader. In other words, it's just the system that's control everything, not just necessarily a dictator. And that makes sense too, because at some point the Antichrist is going to take control of this whole system, and he'll right. do it for his purposes at that point.
Right.
But
see, you and I understand that.
Yes, yes.
The world who does not understand Scripture or know Bible prophecy yes. won't have that picture. But you and I can look at this and say what they're really doing. And I've said this many times. We are setting the system up for the Antichrist. Yes. When he comes onto the world stage, he won't create anything. It will all be established for him.
Yes.
And part of what I enjoy with your ministry and the material that you put out there is we're looking at point A, point B, point C, and saying this is what they're doing. They're establishing the system. So I can say that, but now we can prove it with everything they're doing here. And that's what I really appreciate about you and your ministry.
Yes, I think you're right too. It isn't intentional, it's purposeful, and I think it's unmistakable too, what's going on.
Right.
Right. When global scholars like Parag Khanna talks about the system being the thing, big thing, not just a dictator, that is the system that they're creating, that resonates with me. Now, I don't like that guy at all. I don't think he's maybe a brilliant guy, but he doesn't have anything that I want to take away for sure. But that's what he said in one of his books. So I kind of clipped that out and said, well, I'm going to keep that in my back of my brain as I go along here.
But it's just so interesting because you're allowing us to peek behind the curtain. A lot of things you can hear about what the World Economic Forum and what the United Nations are doing, and it doesn't. You go, why are they doing this? What's happening? And you're providing the resource and the history and the answers to the questions that we really have, because none of us like the path we're going down. But again, that's what I appreciate about what you're sharing with us, because you get to see what this all means. And it's just amazing coming together for that. Patrick, I really appreciate the time you're giving us today. And we could go on for hours with this, but I kind of want to wrap this up a little bit. Are there any final thoughts that you have? And I want to make sure that people know how to get in contact with you and how to subscribe to your ministry. Yes. And I do recommend the books that you put out, that people get a hold of those too. Yes. So how can they find you and how can they follow you?
Well, they can certainly find my books on our website, technocracy.news. And also they're all available on Amazon and other places, Barnes and Noble, I think, as well, or from bookstores that they can special order stuff for you as well. All the books, however, there's one in the middle too called The Hard Road to World Order. And they're all in Kindle version as well, and also in audiobook format. So some people like audiobooks, go there and get something to listen to. But if you like, some people don't like to have a book, okay, well, get the Kindle version. Get my idea. Sure. If anybody buys from me from technocracy.news, I have a store there. I like to send out autographed copies to all of my readers. That's the best, the least I can do, to send an autographed copy of my books.
Right. Well, I got mine. You handed me that one, so I hang on to this one, that signed copy with that. But now, as a pastor, I realize only about 2%, surveys show only about 2% of pastors will talk about Bible prophecy and end times. And so I want to talk as much as I can and wherever I can about it, because I know people are hungry for it. Every time I get to speak, whether it be at a conference or at a church, I know people are hungry for it. So free speech is important to me. And I know that this is your main ministry and what you're known for, but you're also involved in Citizens for Free Speech as well. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. We're the only national organization that tries to reach people directly with this message of free speech. There are lots of good organizations out there, by the way, that will do stuff, maybe organization to organization, maybe they'll put on conferences, maybe they'll sponsor lawsuits to try and correct things. But our specialty is trying to reach people directly with this message. This is a fundamental right that we have in this country, not because man it give it to us, but God gives us a right to speak. And we want just basically to alert people, guys, this is going away quickly with AI, especially right now, what the United Nations is doing to censor everything at sight that they don't like. And our own government is colluding with big tech now to censor everybody at sight. This is the end of an era. If we lose this, we're really in big trouble.
Right. Yeah. AI is just taking over everything. A few weeks ago, I did a teaching on Apple and the new intelligent phone, putting AI into our mobile phones. And today I just released a teaching about China doing the first AI hospital, where you have 14 AI doctors and 4 AI nurses, and they can treat thousands of patients. It's just crazy where AI is going with that. So we'll make sure that people have your information, technocracy.news and citizensforfreespeech.org on the bottom third here, so they can get a hold of you. And again, Patrick, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for spending this time with us. I look forward to doing more ministry with you in the future.
Let's do it.
God bless you, my friend.
Thank you.
Take care. Now, anybody else watching us, again, next week we'll be back on for the final hour for a brand new podcast. So thank you for watching today. I look forward to seeing you back again next week. Until then, everything you do, may it all be done for the glory of God. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Final Hour podcast. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future content. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share this podcast with your family and friends as you help them see that we are living in the final hour. If you want more of Pastor Dave's teaching, you can join our community called Prophecy Seekers, or you can reach us at interpretingthetimes.com. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time on the Final Hour podcast.